For those of you who do not know anything about me, my name is Assata Shakur. I was and still am a political activist. I started my political activity during the 1960s. I started in working with community organizations. I started also when I went to study at Manhattan Community College. I became involved almost immediately in the politics of the student struggle. I also became involved in struggling to end the United States government's invasion and hostilities against the people of Vietnam. And then I joined the Black Panther Party. I did not know it at the time, but the Black Panther Party was the #1 organization that was targeted by the FBI and by the COINTELPRO program. For those of you who do not know what COINTELPRO means, it was a counterintelligence program designed to neutralize, destroy any serious political opposition to the policies of the United States government. What they did was to try to divide and conquer, to set organization against organization, to try to do everything possible to just attack the credibility and the integrity of activists and leaders, and that meant accusing them of all kinds of crimes. It meant suggesting that they were agents of the police, leaving pieces of paper around, false documents to snitch jacket people, which made them, people suspect them, and which created a lot of confusion. They attacked people on all kinds of levels. I was one of the people who was targeted by COINTELPRO, but there were many, many others. As a member of the Black Panther Party in New York City, I witnessed 21 of our most effective, most articulate organizers and leaders be victimized by a conspiracy charge. They were charged with conspiracy, and the charges were insane. They were charged with conspiracy to blow up department stores. They were charged with conspiracy to blow up subways. And one of the most insane charges was conspiracy to blow up the Bronx Botanical Gardens, and nobody could ever figure out, you know, why anybody would want to blow up flowers. That certainly was not part of our political program and platform. But however, they were put into prison for, most of them spent 2 years, more than 2 years in prison. Each was given $100,000 bail. And what that did was to limit our effectiveness in organizing in our communities and make us have to spend a lot of our time, energy, and resources liberating our comrades instead of being able to effectively organize in our communities. I believe personally that COINTELPRO is still going on under another name and a much more sophisticated, much more dangerous type of COINTELPRO. So we can never think that that was an era that was in history. The United States government has not changed. In fact, I think it has become more repressive. The number of people in prison, I think, backs me up. The number of people that are killed by police backs me up. The number of names on computers backs me up. And the fact that Jesse Helms is on the Senate floor talking about arresting people for coming to a youth festival backs me up. So I think that as time goes on, it's more and more obvious that repression is one of the most frequent tools used by the United States government to smash anybody who is fighting for real justice, for real liberty, and for real freedom in the United States. In my case, I was targeted, as I said before, by COINTELPRO, and I was forced to go underground. I was forced to disappear. The police knocked down my door, took everything. I mean, they took my posters, my books, my records, my underwear, and I don't know what they were looking for in my underwear, but they took everything as so-called evidence, and they tried to accuse me of aiding and abetting harboring fugitives. I decided that there were two choices. Either I could talk to the FBI and cooperate with the FBI, or I could disappear. At that time, I considered cooperating with the FBI an unprincipled act, because I thought, and I still think, that the FBI is not a tool to protect people. It is an instrument of repression, and specifically instrument of repression that targets people of color, oppressed people, and specifically African people who are oppressed in the United States. So I thought that cooperating would be immoral, and I decided to disappear. I decided to go underground, and at the time I was very innocent. I thought, well, all they're looking for me for is aiding and abetting harboring fugitives. It was a lie. They never continued that charge. They never made that charge formal, but I thought, well, this is going to roll over. This is a passing moment. But I was very mistaken. What happened was that the FBI and the New York City Police Department, their Red Squad, began to systematically feed news stories to the Daily News, to all of the New York City and national newspapers, creating this image of this woman that is this terrible person, that is this criminal, that is this murderer, that is this bank robber, that is this terrorist. And what they did was they took a photograph of a woman robbing a bank. They put my name under it, wanted, and they put that picture everywhere, in every bank, on the side of buses, on big posters like this, on the subway, everywhere. And what they were doing was creating the condition where any cop in the United States could shoot me down. Had a license, I was like dead meat. And they came out and said, if we see her, we will kill her. And it wasn't just me. They did the same thing to many other people. And some of those other people are still in prison. In May 2nd, 1973, I was shot once with my hands in the air, shot once in the back. I was left on the ground and to die. And they kept coming back and saying, is she dead yet? Is she dead yet? Finally, when it was obvious that I was not going to die right then, I was taken to a hospital where I was chained to a bed. I was beaten, tortured, kept incommunicado for 4 or 5 days. It seemed like 100. I was denied any right to see lawyers, to see anybody. My aunt, Evelyn Williams, who is also my lawyer, finally got a court order to come to see me, and since I could not tell her the extent of what was happening, I told her, please do something, because I was accused of killing a New Jersey state trooper, and New Jersey state troopers were, quote unquote, guarding me, and guarding me consisted at that time of sticking things into my wounds, of putting powder in my eyes that blinded me, and saying that if I did not tell them what they wanted to know, I would never see again, and some other things that I've just never talked about. And I don't really want to get into that now because it will make me remember too vividly that period. But anyway, based on demonstrations outside of the hospital, I was transferred to another hospital, and the New Jersey state troopers were replaced by some other guards. They weren't much better, but at least they did not attack me physically. I altogether spent 6.5 years in prison. I was accused of many things. I was acquitted on all charges except for the New Jersey charge, where I was accused of aiding and abetting in the murder of a New Jersey state trooper. I was tried by an all-white jury in a county where more than 70% of the people, based on a jury project study, were already prejudiced and thought I was guilty. It was a legal lynching, and I'm actually ashamed of even participating in that. I should have just stayed in the cell and said, y'all do whatever you want, because it wasn't a trial, it was a lynching. I was sentenced to life plus 30 years plus 30 days. I spent more than 2.5 years in solitary confinement in men's prisons. And in 1979, with the help of many people, many of my comrades, I was able to escape from prison, and there was no other possible alternative. There was no such thing as an appeal. My aunt was very frustrated. She was doing the appeal, and parts of the transcript disappeared, the evidence disappeared, and so there was no such thing, no such possibility of ever receiving justice in the courts of the United States. I still believe that there is no justice in the United States, and I still believe that more and more the court system and the criminal justice system is a criminal system which serves as a conveyor belt for poor people, for African people, for Latino people, for all oppressed people. I don't want this really to be a run-on sentence. I would like to have more of a dialogue, if that's cool with everybody. Is that cool with everybody? And so I've said a little bit about myself. I don't want to do a speech and tell you what you're already aware of, so I'd rather really address myself to talking about things that you're interested in, whether it has to do with me, whether it has to do with Cuba, whether it has to do with our struggle, or whatever you'd like to ask about.
Let's limit the amount of speeching and do more questioning. Are we agreed? Okay. Monica?
Assata, what is your feelings on the impact of Geronimo Pratt being released from prison after 27 years, incarcerated? What type of impact do you feel his release will have on the struggle against racism and repression inside the United States?
Well, I believe that Geronimo is an amazingly strong human being who has suffered, in an unspeakable way. 9 years in solitary confinement. Geronimo has withstood things that, it's amazing that a human being can withstand. And he has left that prison after 27 years with his head held high and being committed to the liberation of African people and all oppressed people. And so I think that his presence, his words, his experiences are of infinite value to people who are interested in making, building social justice in the United States. I think that his release is a definite victory for all people. But when I think about it, even though I'm clear that his release is a victory, they knew for years and years and years that he was framed. It was obvious. Everybody from 60 Minutes to whoever talked about how he was framed by the FBI. And they talked about it 10 years ago. So the fact that he remained in prison for 27 years still fills me with just absolute rage and indignation. But I think that that is the price that one pays when one becomes an example of resistance. Anybody who becomes an example of resistance to the vicious system that exists in the United States must expect to be targeted. During slavery, they cut off the heads of slaves and they put them on lampposts. And today, even though it is totally obvious that people are innocent, were victimized by COINTELPRO, even though they talked about the Freedom of Information Act and they said, yeah, we did it, we targeted people, we tried to destroy people, but they have never once admitted to and said we tried to put Sundiata in prison for every minute of his political activism. They never said we're trying to kill Mumia. They never. It has been a meaningless freedom of information because really what they give you is a million pieces of paper with all the lines blacked out. So what kind of freedom of information is that? I think that it is important, the case of Geronimo, because I think right now we should start to demand that all of those political activists who were victimized by COINTELPRO receive immediate amnesty. How can you have... How can you have a COINTEL program with no victims? You know, it's an insult to us as a people. So I think that Geronimo will be very instrumental in calling for that amnesty, and I think that everybody should support him and other people who are struggling to liberate political prisoners and prisoners of war.
Chris?
I have a short question. For those of us who don't have a copy of your book personally, is it still in print in the U.S.? And if so, where is it available? Any ideas?
I hope so. Now, I haven't been in the United States in a long time. I don't even know what bookstores exist or not, but evidently people are still buying it.
Does anybody know?
Are using it so that you have to talk among yourselves, you know, in terms of where you can buy it. And I'm also in the future planning, not in the near future, planning to come out with another book. I will not name the book, I will not name the publisher, because I do not want them to be immediately attacked by the FBI or the CIA, etc. The last time, with the first book, the state of Jersey tried to pass a law specifically against my book, and the law was so reactionary and so right-wing that the Times wrote an article about it. You know, people denounced it, and so that they, I think the governor ended up refusing to sign it. So you can expect at some very near date in the future another book to come out.
I heard the book was about racism.
The book deals with a whole variety of issues. It talks about racism, it talks about my experiences in Cuba, it talks about basically what I think it's a talking head book. It started from, you know, a series of interviews that I gave and talks with groups. And then it just started to expand and expand and expand. And people sent questions from, you know, different activists in the movement sent questions to me to answer. And then there came a schizophrenic part of the book where I started to ask myself questions and answer them. So that the book is a mixture of all of those things.
Where do you think in your opinion, where do you think the movement should be heading in the United States? Where do you think it should be heading? And the second part of it is, how do you maintain your ties to that movement?
Well, that's a big question, but I think that one of the things, one of the places that the movement should be heading is to a creative way of reaching people. I think one of the limitations of our organizing style in the 70s, 60s, 70s, 80s was being very, having a very kind of dogmatic, sectarian, I think that too often we did not look for new creative ways of talking to people, of making people aware of what was happening in the world, organizing people, and we relied on, you know, passing leaflets, and a lot of times we talked at people instead of really communicating with people. And I think that one of the most important things now is to use the many tools that we have, like video, like computers, the internet. There's so many creative things that we can do to reach people that I don't think we have to rely on those kind of static, narrow visions of reaching people and organizing people. I think that's one place the movement has to go. I think the other thing is to humanize our struggle. I've met people that I work with, like during the 60s in organizations, and we work together every day. And 20, 30 years later, we meet in Cuba, and we realize that we work together side by side every day, and we didn't know each other. We didn't know, each other's families. We didn't ever spend time together. We never went on picnics together. We never did, anything human together. All we did is come to a meeting and say, all right, did you do your document? No, you didn't do it. We didn't ask why someone couldn't get something done. We didn't ask what was happening with someone's inside, whether, their mothers were sick, etc. We sometimes ignored the children, instead of making them part of what was happening and providing a space and activity for them. We often just, would you please quiet those kids down right back there, we're having a meeting. And so I think that kind of way of making social change has to change. In order for us to effectively change this world, we're going to have to change ourselves. We're going to have to change how we relate to each other as human beings. And I think that part of that is creating a humanistic style of interchanging, of really being concerned about other people who are struggling with us. I think another part of that is creating a sense of community. In the United States, what exists right now is total alienation. People are alienated from each other to the point where people are afraid to have eye contact with other people, afraid to smile at people, afraid to say good morning, good afternoon, how you doing. That is hell. When you're on a planet and you cannot relate to the other people who live next to you, who live upstairs, who live downstairs, then you have no community. And if you have no community, how do you organize a community that does not exist? How do you work in a community that does not exist? So a lot of us are going to have to go back to block, door to door, people to people, how you doing, ways of organizing, and not just organizing the masses, the faceless masses, but organizing human beings and learning from those human beings, because we have a lot to learn. Even those of us who have worked in political struggles for 10, 20, 30 years, we can learn a lot from people. We can interchange, share. And so I think that one of our primary tasks is building a sense of community in our organizations, in our neighborhoods, so that we can start to liberate those communities and eventually start to be in a position to make profound revolutionary changes in the United States.
I was wondering what kind of contact you're able to have with Sylvia Berardini. I was wondering what kind of contact you're able to have with Sylvia Berardini or any of the other women, or their families or anything like that, who are serving time for helping. Are you able to have any?
Well, to be quite honest, I'm afraid, really, to have too much or to try to contact people in prison, simply because I am afraid that the prison authorities will use any contact they find to throw those political prisoners in the hole, to accuse them of God knows what, escape, who knows. And so that I am very hesitant to have direct contact or to contact them by letters. But in the case of Sylvia Baraldini, there is a tremendous movement to get her transfer, first of all, to get her free, and to allow her, since they're not going to free her immediately, etc., to do the rest of her sentence in Italy. I mean, there have been, I don't know how many people who are in Congress, who are ministers, who have petitioned for her to be brought back to Italy. And my participation is then that I have talked to everybody that I can talk to. I've done an enormous amount of interviews with people in the Italian press. I have talked to anybody I can talk to about the importance of supporting the struggle to liberate Sylvia Baraldini and to talk about her right to be sent back to Italy.
Oh, I just had, going back to what you said earlier about organizing and how back in the day you used to go out and pass out leaflets and stuff, and you're saying that we had to, find new ways, new methods to organize. And I just think that I work with a very grassroots organization, and I work with the urban poor, and I think that it's very key to go out into the community, like you said, and pass out leaflets. We manage to get a lot of information out there. But I also agree with what you're saying. We need to become more of a community, and my organization also work with that. We have, like parties in the parks where we can try to unite people, because the media doesn't always put out the truth, and that's what our work does by going out into the community. For instance, working around the welfare reform issues, the welfare departments.
I agree with you, and I think that one of the things that we have been socialized to believe is that we're going to see what we do on the 6 o'clock news. There has been essentially a news blackout since 1970 in terms of political activity that is against the policies of the United States. You can have 10,000 people show up and it will not be a story. Now you can have a dog with 3 ears, and that is news. So that I think that what is important for us as a movement to realize is that there's a whole lot happening all over, and that people are working where they are, they're acting locally, and a lot of them are thinking globally, but that the repression in the United States makes it very difficult to have national organizations. And so part of our work has to be informing each other of what is going on and really fighting against the very false concept that nothing's going on, no opposition to the policies of the United States, because I believe that that is a lie. I see people and I see things from all over of people really doing things, protesting, working around political prisoners, working around police brutality, working to change the fundamental situation in the United States. And then I meet somebody else from somewhere else in the country, and they don't know that the people over here are doing something and the people over there are doing something. So we have to find ways of communicating and letting each other know what we're doing, and start coordinating more and more of our activities with the understanding that a national organization is very difficult, and we have to build the local organizations so that we are strong enough not to be smashed on the national level.
Would you discuss your perceptions of race relations within Cuba, as well as any political activities you've been involved in while here?
I think that when I came to Cuba, I was like, all right, what's happening with the race question. That was number one, and I looked at everything, and I tried to really understand what was happening in Cuba. And the first thing I learned was that I had to learn about the history of Cuba, Cuba's development, etc. And I could not transfer the experiences from the United States to Cuba. That there were two separate experiences, two separate histories. The second thing I learned just from dealing with the relationships that people had with each other, it was not that hostile, division that exists in the United States. People interact with each other on a much more natural way, a much more fraternal, sisterly, brotherly-like way. That does not mean that this is fairyland. The first lesson I learned here, that revolution is a process. That change, social change, building social change, justice, and building socialism is a process. I would love it if it were a magic wand, but that magic wand just does not exist. So that there are still people in Cuba who have racist ideas. There's still people in Cuba that have sexist ideas. There's still people in Cuba that have classist ideas, that want to be millionaires. I mean, this is not fairyland, but those people are not in power. They do not have the power to determine the political, economic priorities of this country, contrary to the United States. So I think that Cuba has come a long way. I think that Cuba is a revolution that is seriously committed to eliminating racism on all levels, not only in Cuba, but all over the world. And I think that in Angola, when it came to fighting racist South Africa, people gave their lives here. And I think that it's not enough just to talk about eliminating racism. It's about really putting your life, your heart, your soul where your mouth is. And so I think that the Cuban people have more than shown that they are committed to eliminating racism. And a lot of people want to talk about racism outside of the context of social systems. As long as imperialism exists, you will have racism. As long as the United States has a monopoly on the movies, the TV shows, etc., you have a situation where they're exporting racism, exporting Eurocentric vision of the world, exporting an idea where, middle class or rich white people are the center of the universe and everybody else is an insignificant other. So I think that Cuba has pointed out specifically to the world the need for the barefoot people to come together, the need for people of color all over to form countercultures, to form counter-information, to form another way of living that is not dependent on cultural imperialism or imperialism. There's a second part to your question.
Your activity here.
Okay. When I came here, one of the first things that I thought I needed to do was to write a book. I didn't want to write it in one real sense. Because it was painful. I didn't want to look at prison. I didn't want to deal with the trials. That was hard to write, but I felt that I needed to just get that out of my system, or it would just gnaw at my inside. So I did that. Another thing that was very important to me when I came here to do was to bond and unite with my daughter. She was born when I was in prison, and we had never had a chance to be together, to be mother and daughter. And so Cuba was a place where that was where we were able to do that, and that was a beautiful experience, a hard experience, a painful experience, but we were able to bond, we were able to come together as a family, as mother and daughter, and I am a very proud mother and grandmother. And I think that my family, in spite of all the things that we have suffered, my mother, you know, she had a heart attack right after I escaped because the police just hassled her and, you know, kept banging on her door and demanding that she let them search her house and invading her work. My aunt has gone through hell, spent 10 days in jail, and you know, years struggling for my liberation. But all of our struggle has brought us together closer as a family, and has let us appreciate the continuity of our struggle, and let us appreciate the importance of families coming together and healing. Because I think that wherever you have people who suffer oppression, you have wounded people. Because every day when you are African, when you are Latino in the United States, you get slapped, then slapped. You get insulted on a daily basis. You can either ignore it, and sometimes you have to ignore it because you can't fight against every time someone follows you around in the store. You can't go off every time someone acts like you're stupid or retarded or, you know, ignorant. You can't react to them. So what you do is it boils inside one. And so I think that sometimes in our family relationships, we take things out against each other. We suffer silently. Children come home, and when their parents ask them, how was your day, they don't have the words to express that the teacher dissed them, you know, that day, and has been dissing them every day for the past I don't know how long. So I think that one of the things that people who are oppressed have to be consciously aware of is that we have to heal. We have to heal on a personal level. We have to heal on a family level. We have to heal on a community level. And I believe that we have to heal on a spiritual level. I think that it is very important for us to do that. And I think that one of the things that I have been able to do here in Cuba is to work on healing. You know, in the United States, you just live in a constant tension. You walk down the street holding your pocketbook like this. You know, this is the first time I've ever lived in a society that is at peace. So I think that part of liberation for oppressed people is a healing process. And another thing I've done here, I studied here for some years. I studied social science and got a master's degree in that. Now I'm writing finishing another book. So I try to keep active, and I also try to to tell people, not only Cubans, but people in the international community here, about the realities that exist in the United States, about the human rights violations. I talk about political prisoners. I talk about Mumia Abu-Jamal. I talk about just, you know, the reality of life in the United States instead of the fantasy that many people receive via the movies, you know, because people really have a movie Disneyland vision of life in the United States.